Okay, so today we are reviewing a tip for combining subject areas in analytics without getting error messages. And you can do that through using the results of one report as a filter for another one. So exclude or match. So the example we are using is how to find expired users that have fines. Because if you use the user subject area here, which is not used in this report, user details are here and blocks, but the blocks don't necessarily mean the person has fines, because if they have a small fine and they weren't actually blocked in the system. However, if you try to combine the subject area of users and fines and fees, you get errors. So we built this report using only subject area columns from fines and fees. So the user details of full name, user primary identifier, purge date, and user status all came from this folder. We also pulled expiry date from that folder and filtered by a date before the end of summer term, well, almost 6 years ago, but 5 full years ago, just to be on the super safe side. We then used the fines and fees transactions folder and got the remaining amount, because we don't care if they owed money and paid it, which is what original amount would be. And the type, so whether it was just a late fine, if it was a lost item fine, etc. So we have fine, fee, type, and remaining amount. We also added a filter for fine, fee, status, because if the status is closed, then that is an indication that this person does not owe the library money anymore. So the results of this report gave us a list of primary identifiers, and we have the two different types of fees on here, a replacement and a process fee. So if we this person only has a lost item process fee. So that's good to know. Obviously, we have many people on here. But we were like, how do we get a list of all the expired users that aren't these people? And so for that, we created a second report. Yep, I'm just going to go ahead and leave because I'm not saving anything. All right, and so the second report was expired users without fees. So for this one, we used the user subject area, and we simply used the full name because that is going to be our match point with the other report. We used primary identifier again, even though it's not user primary identity, so it won't be a match point, but it does help Amanda make sure she's got the right person. We went ahead and kept purge date on there so that she can filter by that. We used the same expiration date filter, so anybody who expired before August 31st in 2017. And then this is the good part, the part that combines the results of two subject areas without causing errors. We added a filter to this primary identifier column, and I'll show you how we did it. And so instead of is equal to, we scroll all the way down to the bottom to is based on results of another analysis. Then you can find any saved analysis. We went in and we got our expired users with fines. Cancel. And then we said relationship is not equal to, because we didn't want it to match. And then we used the columns. Well, it's not letting me do it because of it. There we go. So it's not equal to full name, because user, primary identifier, and primary identifier are not going to trigger matches. So with this filter, anyone who is expired and is not on the expired with fines is going to show up in our results. And now, obviously, Amanda has quite a few users who are very expired, do not have any fines, and most of them had purge dates way in the past. So from chat, the block field under user detail only includes manual blocks. And so it's, what we think of as a block because of an overdue or a fine is a different kind of thing. And then, yes, I entirely agree that based on the results of another analysis is one of the most helpful filters. And what's crazy is when I did the analytics expert series from Ex Libris, they mentioned it one time. And I'm like,
at least they mentioned it.
They did mention it, but they were more interested in like doing crazy things with, I'm just going to add a column on here. By doing so, like going into edit formula and like doing all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, yo, that's really hard. It's not nearly as intuitive as just excluding or only including from another report. So another example of how I've used this is in determining overlap between print or microfilm collections and electronic collections. If because title match doesn't, the title subject area doesn't always work, and I can see if it's in shared, it might be in a different institution. Yeah, title match wasn't really helping us because the descriptors on like material type were not allowing us to filter properly down to, showing what was an e-resource, but also available in print. And so by creating two different reports, I was able to exclude based on, where is it? I may have been working on it in this one. You'll see. I pull a lot from shared stuff just to see how they're doing it and mess with it and try and break it. But then I'm not super great at naming things in my test folder. Oh, let's just go to right here. So this is how Ex Libris would have you do out of the box. What do you have as far as print and electronic overlap? So if you need to edit any of this, you have to really understand the formulas and the functions, because otherwise, who knows? And that subject area is entirely in one. Let me go into Olympic. I know it's in Olympic because I made it first. Okay, so I think I put it in her folder. So anyone see my initials? Okay. So now you can see how I did this one. So this one, I used the e-inventory subject area, used the MMS ID as the match, and based it on a periodicals report where I'd pulled MMS ID, and we got the titles of things in the different collections. But we had to choose something that was there in that match point. So okay, hold on. So I used the title search here, which showed the titles and whether or not it had electronic or print holding summary, but I couldn't get the electronic collection name of like, where is it? To know what potential collections could be canceled because they were getting them in print. And so I used some of the filters from the out of the box, but not all. So yeah, so that's two examples where I was able to find a match point between different subject areas to get results that otherwise would give us an error if we tried to build it straight in analytics using both subject areas. So that is my tip for today. I have been dealing a lot with patron load issues. So if you haven't done a peek at your patron load lately, maybe something's in the water. Take a look at it, make sure everything is happening as you expect it to, and let me know if it's not. So there's been some weird stuff at Peninsula, issues at South Puget Sound. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. So maybe Will wants to share what the weirdness is at Peninsula, just so that all of your brains can attempt to figure it out.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Carly, thanks for kind of helping me take a look at it. I think the thing that maybe might concern me for you guys or for the consortia is that it appears that at least 2 user records might be from other Washington community colleges that somehow have shown up and almost updating them as if they're our students. I'm having my CTC Link administrator take a look at it, and she's trying to figure it out as we speak. So there might be a way that somehow almost pulling in records that don't even completely relate to your institution. And then the other ones, I think, date back to when we started on CTC Link. Somehow almost continuing to update them, even though if they were students, they're no longer students because some of them go back. Laura, I found that out because I got curious. I had so many issues last fall with, getting our query right and figuring that piece out that I was like, are all these actual students? So I finally got access to CTC Link myself so I can compare. And I actually did an audit. We're small enough that we have like 1,600 or so students. So I just went through and looked. And that's how I found out that some of them, even though it seems like they're fine, they look like they should be, they're not. So I don't know if there's a faster way of doing it. I just kind of did it by hand. There might be a way to like compare lists, and I just got curious. So that was kind of a brute force way of looking at it. And fortunately, about, I don't know, this is maybe 15 records out of the 1,600 that kind of got flagged as weird. So 99% of our records are fine. So it's definitely a minority, but I don't know, Carly, if whatever we find out, if it extends beyond, I'm sure we can open a ticket with Ex Libris for the consortia if we think that if whatever's happening could be impacting other people.
Yeah, I'm kind of like the fact that CTC Link is providing non-Peninsula students in your query, I think is a CTC Link issue. But the fact that Alma is for some reason continuing to like recognize the primary identifier of students who are not current.
That sounds like a CTC Link issue too. That sounds like something in the script that's pulling the students isn't working right. Because what should be happening is on the CTC Link, and your script should recognize, hey, this person isn't currently taking classes. We're not going to include this record in the load.
So you're right, Kirsty. David, who does our query, he said that they're not in the query. So somehow those records are still in Alma and being updated, but they're not in his query at all.
Whoa.
Yeah, right? Like,
yeah, so that's where I got concerned. It's like, what's happening here? How's it? It's like they're these zombie or stowaways or something, and somehow, I don't know, somehow Alma is pulling them in. So we'll see once it turns into a ticket what they have to say about it. But Carly's going to help me look at it a little more deeper tomorrow, because I don't understand very well how the records come into Alma. I'm not a part of that here at the institution, so how that transfer file is built. But David, who does it here, is, and he's certain that those records are not in his query. So it's interesting.
Question for you. Do you do complete patron purges every so once in a while? Because we've been having the same problem. And I'm wondering if doing just a complete patron purge and letting it reload might help or not.
So I haven't tried a complete one and then had it reload. That's an interesting strategy. I have been trying to do a bunch of purging because in last fall I had almost 20,000 records that were accidentally dumped into Alma. So I've been trying to get rid of those. But that's interesting because I wonder, I feel like when we first built the query back in 2020, because we were one of the first, if not the first cohort, I guess the second cohort to join CTC Link, things were still very funky in the system. So I don't know, some of these records, if somehow relates to that. Of course, Wade did that kind of on, so I don't really know how that was set up, but part of the reason, or I guess last fall, we rebuilt the query completely because the old one just wasn't working anymore. So.
And well, so what have, yeah, sorry. I assume one of the things you've looked at is when the file of patrons is getting dropped into the FTP server, is it completely overwriting the existing file, or is it adding to?
That is what I hope to have to be doing soon, now that I've
Okay,
identified
okay.
this. I just figured it out. Some of this like in the last couple days. So I'm gonna have IT take a look at that because I don't have access to that
Well, and
server. So I can't do it myself.
like, I know that there's been issues in Alma throughout the years of records being updated in some way that weren't really supposed to be, like, and it was mostly with bibliographic records, or like deleted item records or deleted bibliographic records that were being affected by batch jobs and having their modification date changed. And that makes me wonder, like, is something similar going on with the patron records, where there's something bad going on in the Alma system that's including patron records as part of, being edited by the daily load when it shouldn't be?
Yeah, that is an intriguing theory.
Well, and I do think we need to take a look at that server. And Wade's info on how to connect to it was no longer good, even though I connected last fall after we chatted. So
I did invite David to join us tomorrow. I
Okay,
can ask
cool.
him to see if we can get the server access at the very least. I did ask him to send us some documentation if he has it too, since I could have changed since Wade was involved. I know that we've been doing a lot of stuff for security reasons, so on their end, things have certainly probably changed since 2020.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't even protected by a key. It was just username, password. So
Yeah, that
maybe-
certainly has changed. Yeah, the world has changed for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you noticed something yesterday you pointed out that I found curious. I can't really wrap my mind around it. Some of these two records that may have been from other institutions were first uploaded at one point, and then they were created later on. Like, that didn't make any sense to me. Like, so like, for example, one was uploaded back in November, and then it had like you said a creation date because it was stamped in
Yes.
March.
So
So
when I
like,
went to the job history for user synchronization, and it lists the, like, these users were created, these users were rejected. I did a preview users created because Will had said, yeah, these people were added on this date. And then when I actually looked at those user records, their created on date was March 18th, and there was no history prior to that. So
yeah,
uh,
so it's like they get imported and then somehow, I don't know. I even trying to say it, I can't really make sense of what
did
that
they
means.
get purged? Like, I haven't gone back to look at the users created on the 18th, and you did say that there was a really unusually large load. So
Yes.
maybe they were improperly added back in November.
And maybe got
Properly
purged.
because or deleted, because that's why the user history would have cleared, and then reloaded again.
Yeah, that could be the case. It's very odd though, because those records do have, I don't know if this is how it works for other institutions, but for us, every day, if you look at the history tab, it kind of posts that, if it's like address or whatever, and I think that's just how it updates. So you can see that, like every day it kind of posts, and it kind of makes the history thing kind of messy if you're looking at it for other reasons. But the history goes back to when the record was created. So like, for example, the one record that was back in November, you can see history tab going back then. So if it was deleted, wouldn't the history have been deleted? Or does it come? I don't know. This is beyond the limits of my understanding of how Alma really works with this kind of stuff, but it does seem strange to me. And hopefully that if we include it in a ticket, that will be meaningful to Ex Libris. If
Yeah. So
That's-
anyway, that's gonna be fun.
yeah, and if there is sloppiness with CTC link, that's really unfortunate. I know that some of our institutions, you know, we have programs that we share and stuff like that. So maybe it relates on some level to that, but I hope to get more information as to how these two students, if they are in fact students at other institutions, why they would have showed up even for us. Back in the fall, I did get records that were, it was very weird. It was non-students, and I think it was students from other institutions. I don't know, it was just kind of a hot mess. So the fact that we all share like a major database is a little troubling because it can be difficult to tell at first glance whether these are our students or not if we start getting students from other institutions.
Yeah, and it gets particularly messy with the swap all synchronization because the most recent like modifications each are basically happening every day so long as the person is a current student, because if their info is in the XML that Alma pulls, it replaces everything. So trying to really narrow down when patrons were originally loaded or created, and then like potentially like what's happened since in a, you know, like in a report format by bulk is difficult. Like I had to use analytics, go into the job history files, and then like go into user management and search the user, and then things weren't matching between those three things.
Yeah. It's a head scratcher. Just to share, if anyone it does feel like doing a bit of an inventory, I did also get a list of our Canvas students so that I could kind of compare at first glance. I didn't have to go in and actually check each individual student. If I saw that they were in Canvas, then I can immediately kind of pass by them because I knew then that they were legitimate students here. So that is one little cheat way that I did to not have to search every single student in CTC Link.
I would be really curious to know more about the back end of Canvas and how it integrates with CTC Link.
Yeah, I mean that.
I just thought they clearly have a way they're doing it.
Yeah, and it felt pretty accurate, but I did trust its accuracy, so that might be might be naive on my part. So
well, it might be at least another avenue of exploration, or someone who, yeah, but yeah, interesting issues and not the easiest project unless you are a small school to go through and do that kind of audit. So it's tough to say whether anyone else is having the same issues, right?
I hope not. It's one of those times where I'd rather we be the only one because it is difficult to find. And I don't want to make people feel insecure about what they have. It's quite possible your data is fine, but after last fall, I just got extra suspicious. So
I think, has anyone ever talked to another school or done it yourself, like had done a regular purge schedule? Like I don't really, I mean, like obviously it's difficult to do a purge, and because, you know, then for however long you'd have to like not purge people with active loans or requests or fines or anything else, and it'd only be external, it wouldn't be internal. Has anyone ever used a kind of giant purge to clean up their users?
We purge expired users twice a year.
And how long after enrollment do students expire?
It's usually about a year after in their last enrollment expiration. So there's their expiration of enrollment and then their purge date, and that's like a year later.
And
So,
you're running those regular purge jobs.
yes.
It has anyone basically just like expired everyone and then imported?
No, we
you-
haven't.
You can't do it because anybody that has something checked out is automatically blocked from being purged, and you can't
Yes.
override that.
Yes, or if they have fines also.
Yeah,
So,
there is a thing you can do with fines where you can
Set a limit.
yeah, you could say that if somebody has under a certain amount of fines, it's okay to purge them. But we don't do that.
no, our business office would have bad things to say about us if we did.
Yeah. There was something on the Alma list a couple of weeks ago about somebody using an API to help them get rid of fines that were older than a certain number of years, which they were allowed to do at that point. But that's going on a tangent. But yeah, you can't just get rid of all your patrons because they'll have things checked out, and anybody
Yeah,
who's
would be
checked out.
floating things. There are quite a, so like I went into the API console for the Ex Libris developer network. And I am curious next week to find out how APIs are used. It's definitely not my wheelhouse, but I'm wondering if they like if some of these could be effective tools for the kind of audits that Will did without having to do it line by line. So in Pierce, May of 22, you had a massive number of records increase too, because it had, yeah. So, and Will, it happened to you in like September of 22?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will back up what you said, Carly. And I think Kirsty, the purge function in Alma works quite well. You can kind of tweak it, and I've had to do quite a bit of purging, and I haven't had any issues with it. Getting rid of records that you told it not to. So whether it's and you can, if you feel like it, you can actually modify the expiration date of, or not the expiration date, the purge date of your records if you felt like you've needed to purge them faster. Let's say you have them purge a year after they expire. You can actually change that. And it works quite well. At first I was all nervous and I was doing lists to make sure that it wasn't getting rid of records, but I have not had any issues with it purging records that you've told it not to.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Wade did on the back end for the purge, but I know he and our IT folks worked back and forth together for a couple of days to figure this all out, because it was messy, just like Will and Carly you're describing right now, just to try to figure out what went on. One of the things I do want to mention about purge is during the purge, one of our adjunct librarians, their account got removed and then added back again, and she was disappointed that all of her saved Primo searches went away. And so she had like records that she would use for certain classes and things like that. So if you're going to do a purge, you might want to let folks know that their Primo saved search results and lists and things like that might go away, and it would be good to back them up. She was fine with it, but she was like, oh man, where'd they go? And it was kind of a mystery for us to figure out what actually happened and trace that back. So many details.
Yeah, and that's probably uniquely an issue with someone like an adjunct faculty who is active and then expired and then active, and actually uses Primo and safe searches.
Yeah, I do my purges based on patron type. So, and I try to avoid like the faculty if I can, because I do know that they kind of blink in and out, and they actually have a longer expiration date for that reason. So I try to avoid kind of that situation where for a while Alma thinks they're gone, but maybe they teach a class only once a year or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and I do have some idea of what Wade may have had to do to clean up Pierce. At one point, SPSCC ended up with a bunch of Bellevue users, entirely my fault. But I had to like do a thing where I took the XML and I converted it, and then I created a set, which I then imported, or not import, but like I ran a job based on that Excel file of the set that I made from the XML of the erroneous load. And then Lily got back from vacation and was like, what happened? It says you ran a user purge. And I was like, yep, I did. Had to fix my mistake. And she was like, okay. And they haven't had any issues. Like it didn't delete any of their people that they've noticed or anything. And they haven't had like a strange additional number since then. Like according to the jobs, it purged the same number of users as Bellevue was loading. So I crossed my fingers that those 10,000 records actually disappeared from South Puget Sound. So yeah, it'll be, I might put that on my like to think about list. How is it that CTC Link and Alma talk, and does that provide perhaps a more accurate or consistent, or some clues to a more accurate and consistent patron load for us? So, and
Would it be-
also if you want me to work on your stuff, and just make sure that I have access to your server. So if we need to talk to your IT.
I was just going to say it might be useful to know whether, I don't know, Ex Libris thinks that there's a recommended way of doing it, or whether we even do it differently as far as how that transfer occurs.
Well, I can tell you that they recommend using the Ex Libris SFTP as opposed to institution servers. So the IT departments have basically, they've written scripts, and most I think that I've talked to use PowerShell, Microsoft PowerShell, to pull information into a local location, which then gets moved and converted into a zipped XML file. Ideally, those two things happen through an automated script, and the external location where Alma comes to pull it is the Ex Libris SFTP server. However, some institutions like SPSCC, like Peninsula, are doing the query. It's pulling that into the local location, and then that second step of converting and zipping it for Alma, they are not moving it to an Ex Libris server. They are moving it to a another local server location, which then they have granted Alma access to. And what I have learned so far, and this is I mean, entirely anecdotal, I think, although I probably read similar stories as I searched for information. The Ex Libris SFTP is it's more stable. I mean, like they have backups for their servers. And Alma basically will never get shut out of an Ex Libris server, whereas if your institution gets ransomware, or they have a server fail, or they have server maintenance going on and they're moving things around, or they're doing security updates, and Alma's access to the server where the zipped XML file gets interrupted, then you don't get a patron load. And if that information changes, I also don't automatically get an update about it. Whereas I can fix institution access to your Ex Libris SFTP directory. So if you're interested in whether or not you are using the Ex Libris SFTP or a local server for the SFTP process, reach out and I can help you talk to your IT. But that's I feel very good about that level of knowledge that I have figured out, but it's still not a huge level of knowledge about what's actually happening.
I would love to have that conversation with IT because we do have patron load updates. It happened, in fact, what was it, 2 days ago? They were doing something else, so ours didn't run normally. So
Yeah.
that would be nice, especially if it relates to any of this messiness. So thank you for filling in some of the blanks there. I knew they were doing some stuff, but I don't know. I didn't have the background to really understand what. So that could be an interesting project.
Yeah, I think there's, at the time the implementation happened, a lot of schools still felt like having things on their own server and not, like, it doesn't make sense to me, because like, would you rather have Alma have access to your server, or would you rather be pushing something out to someone else's server? From a security standpoint, the latter sounds like the more secure, and yet there are some institutions that are still doing the on-prem SFTP. So
Well, and I think at the point when we migrated, Ex Libris wasn't offering their own secure FTP server to anyone.
well, that may have
so
actually
wait-
come about between cohorts.
Okay, yeah. But for any of the folks who want to talk their IT into moving to the Ex Libris SFTP server, you can, if it will help, mention that Seattle is doing it. So like my IT department has no issue with this at all.
Yeah, I could very easily put together a list if people kind of wanted a standard email of, hey, here are the reasons and here are the people doing it. And it's really not a big deal. I can get it set up pretty quickly, and then get the information to your IT department that they will need to send the file. And it's not a big deal. It's certainly not like moving from an on-prem to a cloud-hosted easy proxy. Whew. If anyone is thinking of doing that, please bring me in as early as possible. There is quite a bit of work that has to happen. So yeah, got some good practice in that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we would like to have that email, because right now we are doing like security audits because of the problems at Shoreline and the ransomware. So this would be very timely. We might actually get them to work on it with some enthusiasm.
Okay, yeah, I can put something together real quick that you can then kind of tailor to your own group and I can send it out. I will send it out. Ooh, I don't want to put it on the listserv because it'll have information, albeit vague, about SFTP protocols. But I could send an announcement to the listserv that says, ask me for the email, and then just forward it when I get the responses to the individuals. But I saw Laura, will anyone else on here not an Ex Libris SFTP user and interested in convincing IT? Okay, well, I'll send it to you guys and then just kind of send out an announcement via the listserv that is available for folks. And I can look at what Pierce is doing. I don't think I've actually had too many issues with your load enough to remember what I saw. But it was a very amusing day for my husband when I had to go into his office and say, hey, can you teach me everything that you know about SFTP and connecting to servers? Because I don't know what I'm doing. And he was like, this is not a short answer. But we figured it out. So it helps to have IT in the house. Yeah, I'll take a look. Yeah, Pierce, I don't have you on my server site manager list, so I've never actually had to get in and take a look at yours. I probably have the connect. Yeah, true story. Asking ChatGPT for tech help is fantastic, because it really does make things more readable than some of the like tech forum answers. So, but yeah, Wade had information on how to connect to everybody's server, whether it was a local or the XFTP, but if SFTP, but if security updates have happened, if you've changed methods, I might not have the most current, but I can take a look and then we will know where we're at. So, all right, it is 10:54. I'm out next week, as I've said repeatedly. I will, of course, have a computer with me and have access to my laptop. I'm trying not to 100% book myself into sessions so that I can still be available if any support requests come up that are urgent. If you are going to Eluna and provided me with your phone number or personal email, I have invited you to the WhatsApp, so you can join that group, and that way you all do not have to have everybody in your contacts list of your phone. You'll just be in the WhatsApp group. And if anyone has not given me their cell phone number or email for that, just email me. I turned off the viewing. I restricted the document so that y'all's personal information was not clickable from the listserv announcement. So, yeah, so very excited. I think we've got a few things percolating that we can get some answers to at Eluna. And I hope everyone has a great week and a half till I see you again, or I will see you early next week. I hope the weather is gorgeous. My hair is blue and pink and purple. With any luck, I will have time to freshen it up so it's even a little bit brighter than it is currently. So if you see a short person with blue and pink and purple hair, that's probably me. I'm sure there's other librarians with that too, but yeah. So have a wonderful weekend. And I will get this this server letter put together because it would make everybody's life easier. So we'll take the little wins for now, the quick things. All right. Have a great weekend. We'll see you later.